Welcome to the SJ Child Show, where a little bit of knowledge can turn fear into understanding. Enjoy the show. Hi, and welcome to the SJ Child Show. Today, I have a very, very exciting guest. Exciting for me because I personally have been watching her as a doctor and an expert on the Autism Live show with Shannon Penrod, who has been a mentor to me. And so likewise to Doreen. And I hope I can, Dr. Granpeeshah, thank you for being
Please
here
call
today.
me Doreen. Please call me Doreen.
Thank you. Oh, it's so special to be able to connect, like this and through this medium of podcasting and just in the world of autism and be able to really make connections and support one another when we find this community that we can be a part of. So it was definitely great passion of mine to share education and those things. So let's just get started, and please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what brought you here.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be on your show, and thank you very much for having me. I'm Dr. Doreen Granpeeshah. I am a licensed clinical psychologist and a board certified behavior analyst. I started working in the field of autism in 1979, which is always shocking for people when I say that. So I worked at a clinic at UCLA in the 70s, 80s, and I left UCLA in 1990 with my doctorate, and then I opened CARD, the Center for Autism and Related Disorders.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that.
Yeah. And then I spent the next 30 years growing CARD to, I think I sold it in 2018, and it was 260 sites and in all over the States. And it was a wonderful journey, and I got to meet lots and lots of incredible people, both clinicians, physicians, parents, children, who taught me probably the most about autism. And so, I'm really lucky because not only did I learn a lot over time because I was around for so long, right? It's now my 44th year being in this. Yeah. But not just that, but I also have kids who I treated who are in their 30s or almost 30. And so it's wonderful to be able to learn from them. So it's lovely to be here and talk to you.
Thank you so much. And the amount of families that you have been able to reach, I mean, I can't say how honored it is to have you here and just to be able to pick your brain and, and kind of exciting. So I'll just tell you a really brief story about our family. My son was diagnosed in 2010. He was reading at 1, writing at 2, and not yet verbal till about 4. So with him, it was interesting. It was our first introduction to autism. And by that time, I was pregnant with my second child. When DJ was 16 months old, he was diagnosed very early on. And he, at the time, I would say they would have called it severe, was just mostly stimming and just spin circles in his room. We had to pad his room and everything. So it was a very interesting experience for us. But he was also communicating on this little computer, and he was starting to show us like his exceptionalities in that. And so we realized when he was 3, I didn't actually realize until now that he's 13, which I don't even know how to say this, but we knew then that he, was gifted. Now I know he is profoundly gifted, and that's just kind of an exciting new adventure into a whole new world for me. But when he was 8, I recognized at our, psych evaluation that my husband was right there fitting the bill. And so I brought it to him and said, oh, this makes so much sense. Do you love this information? And he said, oh, it's so great. This makes so much sense for me. I'm so happy to. So he is self-diagnosed. Then our daughter was 8 and we took her and got her tested at the school, and sure enough, came back, autism, ADHD, dyslexia. And I'm thinking, how did this little sneaky girl get past me? Like, I've
Wow.
been educating and advocating, and how did this even happen? So it made me question myself. And last year I also found out I was on the spectrum at
Okay.
45. So yeah, that's the wrap up. But
Got
it's
it.
been incredible, just this perception after perception, and just this new, I can now look as a mother, as a self advocate, as a wife. And so it's really special to be able to share these things and help others understand.
Absolutely. And it's rare, it's unusual to have so many family members affected. And I think it would probably give you a very different understanding of what's going on and how it feels. And, that's what I've always found to be very interesting is that I always, when my kids get to an age where they are both able to analyze kind of the experience of having autism and also be able to express it. I always love to talk to them about it and say, what do you think? How does it feel? And right now, actually, I'm working on a book where every chapter is a different child and their family.
Oh.
And these are kids that I've known some for I guess 30 years. And they're teaching me so much about not just the experience, how you experience the world with autism, but also kind of the different interventions and how going through the changes and learning made them feel about themselves.
Mm.
So it's really interesting. You have that ability of kind of being able to see it from multiple different aspects.
It's fascinating. And it really brought us together as a family. Like, we
Sure.
were like, hey, let's celebrate. Let's have an autism cake party. Let's do what we can, because we are embracing who we are and just really trying to teach our community. That's kind of, what I got started with was writing children's books. That's why how I met Shannon was coming onto the
Wonderful.
show. And then from then on, it was like, get your own podcast. Okay, let's do it.
Yeah.
And
Awesome.
just so exciting, the amount of connections and changes we can make. And now, sitting here, on a global level, I've made so many connections. I just can't even fathom how 10 years ago you couldn't have told me that I wouldn't still have a ponytail and sweatpants on running around my house. Is that the only person I was at the time? Just trying to, learn and figure out how to go day by day. And now
Yeah.
I'm helping other families figure that out. And it's
It's
so
awesome.
rewarding. Yes, I love it. So let's touch on one thing that you did say, because I love the to talk. I mean, not that it is controversial, but it doesn't have to be about ABA and about the different therapies.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really interesting. I had the discussions get really heated and can get
Yes.
really, unfortunately. And I kind of did like a little bit of a trial this morning. I posted on my Facebook, what can you name something that's been around for 30 or 50 years that has changed but still has the same name?
Hmm.
People are saying automobiles, Coca-Cola, Avon, and I'm thinking, yeah, all of these things have changed. And we
Hmm.
don't throw them out the window because somebody had a bad reaction to a makeup or a lotion. We haven't, we realize that things change. So I think we can give the same grace and compassion and understanding to how ABA was traumatizing and was set in a different tone, if you will. And
Hmm.
now things have changed, and we need to give understanding to that. We need to be more flexible in thinking about that. And in the sense that in other countries, that's the only way that it can be covered by insurances, is to be called ABA therapy.
Right, right. And no, you're right. You absolutely very good point of view. And being someone who started doing ABA in the 70s, I can tell you that it was different because, and it, by the way, it did have a different name. It was called behavior modification. And that was the case well until I want to say mid 90s.
Mm.
So, and it was the very, very early stages of figuring out that this type of learning, which is based on behavioral psychology, it's essentially I am going to reward good behavior and I'm not going to reward challenging behavior. That concept was until that time not used in autism, in the treatment of autism. You have to remember in the 70s, we're just coming off a period of time where the prominent belief about autism was that it had something to do with the refrigerator mother.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
on the Bettelheim era, right? So even when I started, it was very people were confused. Everybody was like, "What is this? What's going on?" And the prevalence was ridiculously low. Recently I saw a diagram because, as you know, of course, the prevalence went up to 1 in 36 now, but I saw a diagram that said in the 70s it was 1 in 10,000. Actually, I remember that it was 1 in 15,000. That's when
Mm.
I started in the field, mid 70s. And I would say that it just nobody knew what's causing it, what it is. It was very rare. And we were just developing these therapies and figuring out how to take this kind of teaching modality and apply it to kids. And also, the other thing I want to say is that it looked different too. Like
Mhm.
right now, the truth is we have individuals such as yourself on the spectrum who are so high functioning that the normal eye would not be able to pick it up, right?
Yes.
Whereas you look at autism back in the 70s and 80s, I mean, we had very, very severe children. I mean, this is prior to deinstitutionalization. So
Yeah.
there were hospitals where the entire ward was autism, and these were children who were biting off their own fingers or
Mm.
shoulders or banging their heads into the wall so hard that it would cause a protrusions. I mean, it was very, very severe. So a lot of what ABA kind of experimentation and things that were going on at these hospitals was to do any kind of intervention that would stop those severe behaviors. And then it was at that point that people realized, you know what? Kids with autism actually can learn. My God, like this is not lifelong. They are very able to learn. We just have to figure out how to get into their world, how to communicate with shorter, ways of communicating and how to reward every communication, how to replace challenging behaviors with communication, all of that. And it did change quite a bit. And I would say, by the time it became like I remember early 90s, I had opened card and I was talking to folks at UCLA still at the clinic there, and they had stopped completely. I would say at the end of the 80s, they had stopped completely using any kind of punishment or aversive, and it was all positive behavioral interventions. And then I would say probably mid 80s is where you started, the term changed and became applied behavior analysis. And the whole field developed, right? Before that, there was no AB, like applied behavior analysis field did not exist. It was a part of learning under psychology.
Mhm.
So for me, people who are older, like myself, we have our psychology doctorate with an emphasis in learning and applied behavior analysis, whereas newer folks have their degree in ABA. So they just, all the universities changed. So we've learned a lot, a
Mm.
lot. And we've learned in different ways too, I would say, like, for instance, not just, I think the field still, by the way, don't get me wrong, I think ABA professionals still have a lot to learn. I don't think we're there yet, and I could talk about that separately. But I do think that things have changed quite a bit. It is really awesome that we look at challenging behavior. We don't look at it as a problem. We look at it as a form of communication.
Yeah.
And we always try to figure out, what is the child trying to say? What are they trying to communicate? And how do we help them communicate it in a more adaptive way? And
Mhm.
that's in a nutshell how ABA has changed.
Yeah, I love that. And, it was when I was listening to Uniquely Human by Dr. Prezant, and he was saying, just that the communication or behavior is communication. And I was thinking, I am doing things right. I've been doing things right. Like I get this. And, that again, those urges to how can I understand this so so in like ingrained in me? How could
Yes.
I be so compassionate, understanding to the accommodations that I give to my family and these, my wonderful partner of 19 years. And here's a man who he and I have never sat at a restaurant together in 20
Yes.
years and
Wow.
never will. And that's okay. I accepted that right off the bat. Did I know that it was autism? No,
No.
I never. And now we just kind of can laugh about that. But when you can put aside kind of your ideas and learn really deeply who an individual is,
Yes.
I just love to I love having the podcast. I love to be able to have, autistic guests come on and just tell their stories, tell their,
Yeah. Yeah.
showcase themselves and what, they find that the world should know more about, kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's still a long way to go, as I mentioned. I think one of the things that will hopefully develop over the next decade is more of a collaborative environment for people who are in a position to treat.
Mm.
So, right now, ABA professionals are on one side, and then there's kind of biomedical interventions, dietary interventions, just functional medicine as a whole, speech, occupational therapy, sensory integration. I mean, all of it needs to come together, I think. And there's still not enough communication. I'm still shocked when I hear that there are ABA agencies that will like almost threaten the
Mm.
families if they are receiving biomedical interventions. I had a
Hmm.
family reach out to me recently and said, how do I talk to my BCBA about adhering to this diet, which is so crucial to my child?
Mm.
They just don't care. They don't believe in it. They won't listen. And that is, to me, it's outrageous,
Yeah. You get
that
a new company, you find somebody else
exactly,
right
that's
there,
exactly
parent.
what I said.
Mm-hmm,
That's exactly
mm-hmm.
because that is just outrageous to me in this day and age to be closed about all the research and
Mm.
developments that have supported dietary biomedical interventions. It's crazy.
Absolutely. And I think agree 100% that you're on the right track. Like when we can integrate somatic experiences too, and we can help understand. When I started realizing that my son and this always sounds crazy to everyone, when I realized that he was sleeping on a moon schedule, that every 2 weeks he was going to be awake in the night, every 2 weeks he was going to be asleep in the day, awake in the day, whatever. And when I gave into that instead of fought against it with melatonin and whatever, and all of
Yeah.
the lavender baths and blah, blah, all of the things, when I just said, look,
Yeah.
here's my husband who can eat a meal, fall asleep for 3 hours, wake back up. Like, wait a second, this guy is doing the same thing. Now I can let this child have that same experience in his own time. There's no fighting. There's no, time arguments and you have to go to bed at this time. He's 13. He can get his own items, bathroom, all those things that we still have to get up with him several times when he needs it, but it's okay. Like I've already accepted that part of it. I stay home with him and our life is built around what they're how we can serve them. Like we've already had our childhoods, right? Now how can
Yeah.
we help them and serve them to have the best they can have for now? So, but
That's
it
wonderful.
yeah,
That's
and I think that that's hard for a lot of families because they're so set on that society's 9 to 5 or whatever kind of time frames and diets, like you said. When we a sister-in-law reached out to me when DJ was maybe 3 and said, look, I saw this Dr. Goldberg, I believe was his name at the time. You probably, I saw this. Go look at this website, check it out, see what you think. And I said, well, I don't understand why we can't do this. I was a medical paralegal at the time. So I dove deep into well, why? Why does it stop it? Why is gluten different? Why is casein doing this? Like, what's happening? Why, if we take it out, what was causing it? What was it doing in the first place? And for me, finding out that, it was all protein inflammation based, that it was so interesting for me to then go, aha, and have this understanding of what was happening in my child's body. And then to see that response when we took the gluten out and he
yeah.
stopped spinning. We got to
Yeah.
take all those pads down,
Yeah.
like I had said at the beginning. when he was reading and writing at 2 years old and was writing things like escalator and gorilla and was, just this huge vocabulary. When we took that Kaysen out, and in
Hmm.
the first week, he spoke nearly 50 words.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. It's
life
a huge,
changing,
huge life
life changing.
changing.
Yeah. And yes,
I
he's
agree.
still autistic. He's still an individual. He's still himself. But now he has a limited, and now he chooses to do that. He doesn't want things that have gluten in him. He knows that it gives
Yeah.
him a stomach ache or whatever. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like any other, we forget autism has this tendency, it's such a powerful big word that it has this tendency to overshadow other things that are going on. The fact that a lot of our kids have gluten and casein intolerance really has nothing to do with their autism. A lot of other people have gluten and casein intolerance as well. And it's almost like someone who, let's say, my husband has a peanut allergy, right? Pretty significant.
Mm,
Like imagine if he had to go through life eating peanuts. And this is what I'm saying. Like it makes sense to remove those things that we are either allergic to or not able to digest just because it makes us feel better.
yes.
It's such an important part of it. And I can't tell you the number of parents that I've met over the years where their child had very, very severe GI issues, for instance, gastrointestinal, and they were told, oh, this is just part of the autism, kind of, you got to deal with it. And it isn't. It's you
No.
have to take care of those individual things. Another one that you talked about is sleep. When you figure out what is going on with your child's sleep, like you figured out his schedule, that's so vital. It just reduces the stress level of the family so
So much.
significantly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so important to understand what's causing the symptoms in each child.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of learning that I'll keep doing, right? I'm continually
Oh,
learning
me
and
too. Listen,
yeah.
I'm like more than, I'm like 40 somewhat years into this field and I'm learning every day. I
Yeah.
promise you. It's a puzzle. It is, and we learn so much as we go on. Yeah, for sure.
Definitely. And I look forward to the day when DJ hopefully has the cognizant, maybe conversation skills to explain what his autism is like for him to me.
Yeah.
And, do you see graphs in your head? Like how, like I want to know
Yeah.
like the real
Yep.
stuff that's going on. He's explained to us that he has, I always pronounce this wrong, synesthesia. Is that how you say that? He
Yep.
sees colors for uh, he sees colors, is that
Yes.
correct? for
Yes.
for sounds, and things like that, like tones. He sees colors, and so he can tell us, just the fascinating world that he can uncover for us, and
Oh,
hopefully
absolutely.
we can do that.
Absolutely. There's no question that the way they perceive the universe is very different and it can vary. I mean, it is definitely a spectrum. I have children whose memory is so astonishing that, they are able to remember extreme details of events that occurred years ago.
Yeah.
I have children who have an incredible ability to mathematically calculate things into the future. I mean, and as you said, children who are just they perceive things in a different way, they organize things in a different way in their brain.
Yeah.
And so it is fascinating. And I'm sure one day we will have enough of those individuals telling us how they're seeing the world so that, we can bring it together.
I hope so. I think it's so interesting. And
It is.
I've loved being a part of it. And right, at the very beginning, I was already fascinated with early childhood education. So I just really wanted him to learn as much as he could right off the bat. And boy, I didn't know it would go so fast. But
Yes.
so we'll find out now that we know, like, he phased out of high school at 12. And so now we'll be finding our new paths in the possibly in the gifted community now that I've been
Yeah.
introduced
Yeah.
to them through,
Yeah.
so that's
Yeah. I mean,
wonderful. And
I've had a couple of kids. One of my kids finished high school, everything at the age of 9, and actually then just continued on Khan Academy online.
yeah.
And then he and I have another child as well, who both of them were so strong in pattern analysis. This might be something that your son's going through, that they later were able to help work for the government in regards to, patterns and things that they see in central intelligence.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's no, and a lot of our kids, as you know, are just fantastic with things like computer skills and robotics and all of those areas. And I know it's interesting that I see the world changing in that way as well, where I feel like some of the skills that our kids have will become even more valuable as the world changes, and technology and machine learning and that kind of analysis becomes more and more vital to our everyday lives.
Yeah, I agree. And so hopefully we can work on, as just a nation and a community, the transition processes for adults, the accommodations in the workplace for adults, and just really understanding how we can serve an individual on an individual level and
Yeah.
not just in a group, kind of a setting. So,
So
um,
important.
so you have a book coming. What else is in the future for you?
Well, I just am so glad that I get the opportunity to tell you about this podcastathon that we're planning to do. And it's funny because Shannon Penrod and I, as you mentioned, the host of Autism Live, and she and I work together, and of course she also hosts my show, Ask Dr. Doreen. But we decided a while ago, maybe a month ago, that we would like to do a kind of a marathon podcast, which is also on video, and live for 44 hours. And we selected 44 because at that time when we chose it, it was 1 in 44 kids.
Just last week, right?
And we committed to this. And so we started planning this. And this podcastathon begins on on Thursday of next week, which is April 4th. And it begins at 3 p.m. Pacific time, and it will go straight for 44 hours. So it's on Autism Live, and it's on all social media. And we love to have people join us because it's going to be amazing. I mean, we have so many incredible guests coming, and Shannon has done a tremendous job of getting it all scheduled.
She's fantastic, and we'll be there. So please
Yes.
come. I'll be there on Thursday morning, 7 a.m. Eastern. I think that is the 6th, the April 6th. So yes, definitely be sure to make it, because my guests are going to be the Global Autism Project and how they are creating a curricula for underdeveloped countries to have resources for autism.
Oh, that's awesome. That's terrific. Yeah, I'm doing a lot of work. I'm doing a lot of work with folks in Saudi Arabia right now. I helped set up a clinic in Dubai many years ago. One of the other presenters on during the podcast is also my dear friend Ilana Gershowitz, who I helped them set up their programs in South Africa. So yeah, I love the fact that there are folks working on providing resources, because honestly, other countries are quite far behind where we are at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And we need to support everyone we can. And, when I came into this journey, it was very isolating and lonely. And now I've found this huge community that I'm a part of and feel seen and heard and loved. So, we're so thankful to have you here today to share this with us. Tell people where they can go to find you if they'd like.
Of course. Thank you so much. Yeah, I have a website, Doreen Granpeeshah. You can look me up. Also, we just discovered it's 13 years that Shannon and I have been doing my show, Ask Dr. Doreen, and all of that every week for 13 years. So all of that is on YouTube. If you go into YouTube and just put in Ask Dr. Doreen, you'll see tons of video footage. I'm also on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. And I answer questions live on those social media, but also on my show, which is every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, Ask Dr. Doreen. And I love doing that. It's my favorite thing to do. And I love being in touch with the families, learning from them, and also trying to help guide them as well.
Oh, thank you so, so much for all you've done and all
It's
you
such a
continue
pleasure.
to do. Yeah, it's just an honor to get to know you. And I hope I can go and just follow you on all those so we can stay in
Oh,
touch
for
on
sure. Of course, we'll
social.
stay
And
in touch. I'd
thank
love to come
you.
back and talk about
Please.
other things. It was lovely. It was such a
Love
pleasure.
that.
I really
Oh,
enjoyed it.
thank you so, so much. We'll
Thank you.
definitely be in touch.
Sounds good. Thanks so much.